What I'll do today is just give you a quick position of Leonardo in terms of a global aerospace and defence company, talk a little bit about the business and bring that right down to my home in Somerset. I'm sure we all have a passion for the area and the locale, but I was certainly born and bred there and spend as much time there as I can when possible. But I think the key thing today is about the response to COVID. So we're going to talk to you about a few of our experiences, a few of the challenges that we faced, but also I think the opportunities there if we can support yourselves in any way in terms of the documentation, the experience we've had, then we're more than welcome to and open to engage with you post this session to share some of those thoughts, ideas, and how we're going to be moving forward as well. So myself and the team will be absolutely available to do anything post this session. So kicking off in terms of the company itself, 4 key divisions, 4 areas of interest. One is helicopters, which you are probably more familiar with. And we have recently purchased another helicopter manufacturer called Copter, a very small enterprise based in Switzerland, which is giving access to a particular market segment in the light single market. That program is currently going through development and should be on board as a flying platform in around 2021, 2022. Defence electronics, a key business stream of ours, very prevalent in the UK, and you'll see some of the sites and the facilities that we have in some of the slides, but a key area of business for us, supporting the Typhoon fleets internationally. Aeronautics, mainly heritage out of Italy, and then space, we have JVs with a number of different partners globally and very active now in the launch domain as well. So a very large group with significant market share in most of those areas. Just go to the next slide, Alistair. So as I said, key divisions: helicopters, aircraft, electronics. We do have a footprint in cyber as well. But to give you a feel of the shape and size of the business, 13.8 billion of revenue in 2019, order backlog of 36.5 billion. So you get a feel for the shape and size of the business. And I think new orders 2019 was just over the 14 billion mark. So really looking, we're not as big as the Boeings and the Lockheed Martins of the world, but in terms of European defence, we are very significant. And that footprint really does give us market access and an opportunity that we try to leverage as much as possible with governments and international partners globally. All of our divisions, because of the nature of them, have seen some challenges over the recent periods, as you would anticipate, and that's manifested itself in a number of ways: through customer demand, through responding just to the growing requirements of the kind of civil sector as well, whether that be PPE support or those type of things. We've had that kind of interaction across all of the divisions and used capabilities, whether that be 3D printing or other manufacturing support to really deliver against those wider community aspirations. And of course, from a UK government perspective, you've all been hearing the narratives through the various recent discussions around levelling up, prosperity agenda, build back better, a number of government initiatives coming forward. And what we're trying to do within some of the work that we're doing through those divisions is deliver against that in the UK. So if you just go to the next slide, Alistair, I'll talk a little bit more about our global footprint and then lead that into the UK, because we do have heritage globally. Our domestic markets are classified as Italy, where our headquarters is, Poland, the US and the UK. And of course, with the COVID scenario, Italy was hit first from a European perspective. So Northern Italy, where we have a number of facilities, really did take the brunt of the initial impact. And I think we were watching the press in Q1 of this year, in January, February, March, in seeing what was unfolding in Italy and wondering what would come here. And I think that gave Leonardo a little bit of a head start maybe in some of that thinking and some of that planning, which allowed us to put some significant measures in place. But you see from that global footprint, we are a truly international organisation, and working internationally is something I think our employees really do take advantage from. I worked in Italy for myself for 3 years, and then on and off for another 3 to 5 years as well. So building those international relationships are key. And as we do start to pull through the COVID scenario, one of the key things that we need to be aware of is that we will be exiting the European Union at the end of the year. So there's some other challenges coming forward for ourselves as businesses and international businesses that are really going to challenge how we deliver our business. But there are opportunities with that as well, and we need to make sure that we're working with organisations such as the Somerset Chamber and wider afield with broader government to ensure that those opportunities really are grasped. I'll touch on some of the kind of free trade agreements and some of the intelligence that we're getting around what's coming with Japan, with Australia, with New Zealand towards the end of this presentation. And those markets are key for us really to exploit and really to deliver our business moving forward. But 9,000 suppliers globally, over 150 domestic countries we operate in addition to our own marketplaces in the US, Poland, UK and Italy. So a truly global footprint, and helicopters operating in a number of those countries, but some of our systems and cyber protection systems in place with others as well. Next slide, please, Alistair. In terms of the UK, significant footprint, 7,000 direct employees across the UK. I think we support something in the region of 26,000 employees through the supply chain and induced employment, 7 main facilities. So in terms of that message around strength of the union that you will have heard from the government coming forward, we have a facility in Edinburgh with 2,000 employees. It's the heart of our business, and we take great pride in the capabilities that exist there. So it's key for us that whatever potentially happens with the Holyrood elections next year, leading into potential Indy Ref 2, that we do support whatever the people decide at the end of the day. It's a democratic decision, but we would like to think that our capabilities have heritage and can be used regardless of any outcomes of those type of things. But that would be a key challenge for us as Brexit is leading to be moving forward. But 400 plus people now on apprenticeships, and I'm pleased to say that through this period we have moved ahead with continuing to recruit the numbers that we plan to. It's very important that we keep the pipeline into the young people in apprentice programs, and I think organisations suffered in the late 80s, early 90s when they switched off those programs. We started in the helicopter division in Yeovil our apprenticeship back up in around 92, 93, and we've seen the real benefit of that through the talent that's brought into the organisation ever since. So good numbers coming to Yeovil. I think is around 100 this year in terms of graduate and apprentices, but we'll take something like 150 to 200 nationally as well. So really good numbers in those programs, and you see a number of employees that have come through that training route, got that background, got that experience, moving into quite senior positions. Our MD and CEO today of the UK business, Norman Bone, is a former apprentice, not with Leonardo but with another organisation, but it shows that those skills that people pick up are really do have value and utility moving forward. A key part of the offering that Leonardo has to the UK in terms of that Build Back Better agenda is around our ability to export. The platforms that you see come out of Yeovil, the 159, the 101, are exportable and operated by many governments globally, and what that allows us to do is balance that mix of business between the UK MOD and the international market to ensure that we've got a balance in revenue streams. And what we normally see is that if one might be taking a step back for a period of time, we work hard on that other space and pick some of those few. So very active in that export market, and again with the challenges that we've seen with COVID and the inability to travel, that's meant that we've been using facilities like this, the collaboration tools, to be as effective as possible in customer discussions, because our customer support business is a significant element of our activities as well, and we need to make sure that connectivity with customers is there on a regular basis. Sometimes challenged given the language challenges that we have, but nevertheless we need to move it forward. We are starting to see more travel pick up, and of course we've tried to ensure that we can be there when the customer needs them. When an aircraft is on ground and it needs a part or needs a technician, then we do support them in travelling. Of course there's quarantine requirements potentially when they come back into the UK, but we've been able to manage that through having key workers in the test and trace programme as well. So looking at those mechanisms that the government have put in place to ensure that we can be as flexible as possible in terms of delivering what the customer needs. Next slide please, Alistair. I won't dwell on this slide too long, but it just gives you a quick flavour of the capabilities we have across the breadth and length of the UK. And of course, Yeovil end-to-end helicopter capability, design, manufacture, support. Other key sites I would probably reference Luton and Lincoln, strong electronic warfare cyber capability, defensive aid suites for the Typhoon programme, and as I've already mentioned, radar in lasers and infrared countermeasures in Edinburgh. We do have a small facility in Bristol that looks after our cyber business. There's about 150 to 200 people up there, most of them remote working at the moment, but that is a very strong capability we have and does a lot of work with NATO in terms of their overall support requirements as well. So good footprint across the UK. Just touching on Yeovil on the next slide specifically, and many of you will be familiar with this from your interactions with Simon, but I'm sure the helicopters and Natalie's aware of this right now because they're flying around over her head. I think they were up early this morning as well, Natalie maybe, but the AW101, the AW159 key products with heritage from Yeovil, and we produce and support that capability, but we're also looking to the future as well in terms of what is next in terms of rotary and vertical lift. And many of you might have seen the tilt-wing platform that we have in the AW609, and we're looking at future developments both in terms of technology and business offerings and structure, really to drive and grow the business forward for the future. It is a challenging environment though. There's a lot of very strong competitors in this space, and we need to make sure that our offerings are technologically advanced and deliver the bang for the buck that the customer really needs. But we have that capability in Yeovil, and it is unique in the UK. Airbus or Boeing might tell you that they have these capabilities, but they don't. So we want to maintain that and ensure it's there for when the UK requires it in the future as well. Next slide, please, Alistair. So let's talk COVID then, the reason for being here today. So as I mentioned at the start of the conversation, having that headquarters in Italy was really a godsend, I think, in terms of the intelligence and the interaction that we were having. Italy was probably 4 to 5 weeks ahead of us in reality in terms of what was being seen. And I think everyone will recall pictures on the press and the BBC and ITV and other news outlets of the rather harrowing scenes in some of the Lombardy region in the hospitals, where there were people actually in tents outside because they were simply overwhelmed. Italy did go into lockdown ahead of the UK, but what we were seeing in terms of responsiveness from the business was even in advance of that reaction in terms of stopping international travel. The Singapore Air Show was a massive event at the start of the calendar year. It was a very quick decision to decide that we didn't want to send people to the Far East at that time and potentially increase transmission coming back into Italy, UK. And we very quickly switched off international travel as a response really soon in that process. The challenge then is, how do you maintain business continuity and how do you maintain employee health and safety, which is the key priority. We can't afford to put any of our employees at risk, and we took a very clear stance at the start not to do that. But we do have those challenges, of course, of delivering against key programs, and some of the programs that Yeovil in particular is delivering will support carrier strike group and other critical MOD requirements in the early part of the new year. So getting that balance between how do we support those employees, how do we put the right risk assessments in place, and how do you mobilise a workforce that traditionally has been coming into an office from 6 till 2 or 8:30 till 5 every day to work shifts or to work at their desks to be able to work at home. So very quickly, and I would say this, but hats off to our IT colleagues, probably for the first time, because we always complain about IT, but they managed to mobilise something like 3,000 remote working devices, laptops, mobile phones. We have something called VDI unit, which allows someone to share their desktop through a black box at home. And that enabled around 2,500 engineers to be up and running within probably 3 to 4 days from that initial shock of you're now all home working through to getting to be productive. Our operations and manufacturing staff continued to come in. We reduced working hours in the initial phase while we got the correct cleaning regimes in space, while we got the right risk assessments in place. And of course, we were appreciating those challenges around PPE that most of the health sector was appreciating as well. Because a number of our programs were deemed as critical, we were able to confirm that some of our employees were in fact key workers, so they were allowed the same benefits as NHS staff and the medical staff as well. But providing the right PPE was a key requirement, and we still have challenges now. We've got something like 50,000 FP2 face masks, and I think everyone's become an expert in face masks and viral protection, but we've got a hub in Yeovil which delivers that PPE capability out to the rest of the UK. The challenge then becomes, in terms of the response, how do you maintain a good dialogue, good connectivity with those employees that are both at home and then at work? And the challenge was to balance the communication between those who were coming in and felt they were at more risk, that they were giving more back, versus those who were sat at home and absolutely working exceptionally hard. But the perception is, if you're sat at home, you're potentially not doing anything. And again, with a quick discussion with Natalie this morning, we established that she was drinking wine while her brother, that was is one of our employees in the procurement facility, was working very hard all day. So sorry, Natalie, I probably shouldn't have said that. However, it is a balance, and the communication that we drove, I think, was critical to keeping employees on side and listening as and when required. A huge number of views, some quite blasé employees around the potential risk and the concern of others, while some were maybe further to the right in terms of not wanting to put their family or themselves at risk of any potential infection. And there's got to be a balance between each of those. But I think we did that quite well. The volume of correspondence and communications, both face-to-face, both virtual and through vlogs and blogs, increased exponentially through March, April and May, and I'm pleased to say that's continued, and we've had very good interaction and engagement on a number of those elements. So getting that balance was the key for us, and I think we did it reasonably well. And if you go to the next slide, Alistair, I'll just talk about a few of the things we did. This is a few snapshots from one of our interactive portals. And I think this is also driving how we're going to approach the future, because as you will have all realised, and I think we've realised, the kind of traditional, you'll get on a train at 6 o'clock in the morning, end up in London, work there and go home in the evening and commute for hours, or come into the office from 9 till 5, is probably not going to be the norm moving forward. We've taken the decision that we don't want it to be the norm. Now, of course, that drives conversations around real estate, footprint, how you measure performance, etc. But we've taken the bold step now to say, look, let's make working remotely the norm. Clearly, there's a balance there as well, because you need people to collaborate effectively, but let's maximise the use of the IT and infrastructure to do that, while we're also addressing the needs and requirements of our employees wherever they might be. So massive activity around employee engagement and well-being, ensuring that people aren't sat at the end of their bed with the ironing board slightly lowered and their laptop positioned on the top of that and trying to work for 6 or 7 hours a day. If they've got dependents to care for, that there's time out for that. And what we've found is colleagues are delivering their time differently. Some people will get up earlier in the morning and work through till lunchtime. Some will come on line later in the day. The key point is that output, and that really is a new flexible approach to how we want to have people deliver their output moving forward, and what that looks like within the smart working environment. So huge amount of adjustment, and we're now going through a series of discussions with employees around what additional equipment might they need to make that home working more effective. That's really important for us. Next slide, please, Alistair. One of the key things we felt was important, and I mentioned the volume of apprentices and graduates we have, is our STEM at Home initiative and STEM activities. During a normal week, we probably have something like 50 to 60 employees going out to schools, to universities, to colleges, to influence youngsters in terms of the decisions they want to make moving forward for GCSEs, A-levels and apprenticeships and futures careers. And I'm very proud of this, and if people want to see some of this, it's available on the intranet. The STEM at Home activity is a series of interactive videos giving parents and children an insight into things they can do while they might be on lockdown, etc. And we've had a huge hugely well received response to that. And it just goes to show that with a bit of ingenuity, and it's mainly our graduates and our own apprentices that have been doing it, that you can use an iPhone, make a video of someone being creative, that they can then take and do that at home. And I'm sure for the parents it's a godsend, because it will keep the children quiet for an hour or two while they can get on and do some other things. But that's been a really good initiative, and as schools start to return in September, we'll be able to take some of that back into the schools and share with them that, well, not only are you using the technology that we're helping educate on, but you're also using the collaboration tools to deliver some of this as well. So it really has been a godsend for us in terms of the work done there. Next slide, please, Alistair. So all of that's fine, well and good, but there's really significant considerations for an organisation such as ours to take moving forward. The graph you can see there is the collapse of GDP in the period, which I think is unprecedented since the Great Ice Age back in the 1600s, or some other date back in the ether. But this will be the challenge for defence and aerospace companies. It will be the challenges for business moving forward, because the government has committed to spending 2% of GDP on defence. Well, GDP is going to be a significantly amount smaller next year than it was the year before. So that defence budget is going to be impacted. So there are going to be some significant challenges while we look to recover that position, while the good work that the government's done around some of the offerings in terms of furlough, in terms of business loan schemes, start to be unwound and need to be paid back. Because Leonardo is a defence contractor in part, we decided not to furlough employees over the period. Some defence contractors did, but we felt it would be kind of taking available cash twice. So we took we had everyone effectively working anyway, so that necessarily wasn't a problem. But we've now got to realise that all of those things need to be recovered and responded to, and that GDP number has to pick up. What that looks like in terms of a V shape or a U shape or a whatever shape, we're not at liberty to say. We have some views and some forecasts, and we think there will be initial early response, but then it will take time and it'll be a slower build back to where we were in the past. Then on top of that very challenging scenario, you also have to consider us in our future relationship with the EU. Our view is that zero quota, zero tariff trade deal by the end of the year is probably unlikely, simply because the timing left, given where we are in the discussions currently, is going to challenge that. What I think we'll see is an extended implementation period, and this will be to, again, positioning with the public and the general population to say, well, we've gone through the transition and now we're starting to implement the deal that's in place. So there will be a framework of some description, but there will be, another period of time as those agreements are bedded in, and that might be through the whole of 2021. That's our take from the intelligence we're getting at the moment. What else is interesting, of course, though, is the trade deals that are coming with Japan. And we already know that Japan will be very similar to the EU trade deal, but will also include digital services. Again, what that looks like exactly, we're not quite aware, but there will be a digital element, which is more than the EU wanted to do in its initial trade deal with Japan. So some interesting points coming through there. Negotiations with the Australians, with the New Zealand delegation are moving forward as well. And we also expect there to be something in place in terms of framework with the US. So very interesting to see over the next probably 2-3 months, as we see a return from the holiday period, US elections out the way, what the shape looks like. It will, of course, be interesting to see the dynamic of the US election within this, whether it will be a Republican government or Democratic. We think the Democrats will look to pivot towards Europe more readily than the UK potentially. So there's some interesting insights and understanding to understand the geopolitical dimensions there. But then, of course, wave two. What happens if we have a second wave? Well, we think it's unlikely that we'll go into a national lockdown. Certainly the intelligence we're picking up from government suggests local lockdown, as you've seen in Leicester, as we're seeing potentially in Oldham and Manchester at the moment, is more likely. The impact on facilities such as Yeovil is quite significant from that, though, because if we get a local cluster in the final assembly line or one of the manufacturing areas, that potentially takes out all of the 200, 300, 400 production staff. So we've got to be very aware around that ongoing potential of transmission of virus internally within the business. So there's a huge amount of activity in place to make sure that the sanitisation, that the awareness is maintained with the employees, because the biggest challenge is someone interacting socially and then bringing that into the office. So while we don't want to stop employees enjoying themselves on a sunny day if they can, we do need to be very aware that there is the potential of bringing that infection back into the workplace, and that would really give us a challenge. However, we've got business continuity plans, business resilience plans in place, and we would like to think they're as robust as they can be, of course. And again, if anyone would like to see examples of the risk assessments that we've adopted for particular activities, then please drop us a line afterwards and we'll be more than happy to share that. So the COVID kind of activity is raised some challenges. I think it's given some opportunities. What we need to do now is make sure that we're well positioned to respond to the recovery as best as possible. And I think what you're going to see from the government in September as Parliament comes back is an invigorated approach, hopefully with crises around A-level and GCSE results out of the way and schools back, but you will see more around that prosperity piece, levelling up agenda, and build back better. And I think if you go to the next slide, Alistair, some of the messages that we are putting forward to government to make sure that our position is understood, particularly from a helicopter's perspective in the southwest, is around that very point. So you can see there that the impact of Leonardo in the southwest is pretty significant. This comes from a report in 2013, and the data is not significantly different today. We've just commissioned an activity with Oxford Economics looking at the prosperity and the economic impact of the company in the UK, and we'll be releasing that towards the end of September, which we'll be happy to share with you, and maybe we can do it less virtually and you could come to the facility itself. But it does deliver similar messages around what we do in terms of gross value add back into the economy, what we do in terms of job supporting, so on and so forth. So then there's some key things there that organisations such as ours can deliver back to the UK economy. So spend £1 with us, you'll get, I think it's £2.40 return to the wider economy. If you spend that with a US defence prime, and of course I would say this, that's £1 spent. So you might get a cheaper ticket price, but you won't get that return back to the broader UK economy. So again, those messages aligning with the UK government's points, I think are really strong. Next slide. Moving forward, where's Leonardo going? Intelligent partnerships is key. You might have heard of the Tempest programme. It's going to be the future combat air solution for the UK, which replaces the Typhoon. We are part of the K4 consortium with Rolls-Royce, BAE Systems and MBDA to develop that new technology. And everyone might have seen the Tempest model, which is a platform. It's a fast jet fighter. It probably won't look like that. In fact, it definitely won't look like that. What we're doing is developing the conceptual operations. We're developing the technology that's going to deliver the outcomes that the Ministry of Defence requires in the future. So the platform is of less significance than the sensor and the effectors that are on the platform that deliver the outputs that the MOD want. So partnerships is one, of course, innovation. So having the right people that can innovate with the right tools and capability is key. And that's why events like this are important, because if we can collaborate, if we can work together, then that allows innovation to grow. Clearly, money's going to be tight. We've just seen the GDP chart, but we need to make sure that we focus our investment and our available cash on the right skills and capabilities moving forward. And of course, customers want what they want. So we always have to be very aware that we're delivering against whatever those customers' requirements are, whether that's the UK government or whether that's an international export customer for search and rescue aircraft or defensive aid suites on one of their fast jet programs. So that's how we're looking to drive the business forward against those 4 key pillars. Any questions, I suppose, Alistair? That's a very quick run through. So hopefully that gave a flavour of where we are in terms of a business, what we've done, and where we've been with COVID and what we want to do moving forward.